Hey there everyone, AJ back again for the Mighty Gluestick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full time and have a collection of well over 600 videos on monster ecology, fantasy world history, character classes and magic items on my channel. If you like what I do, please consider becoming a member of the channel by clicking the join button down below or backing me on Patreon where you get access to all of these scripts I write for these vids. Members of either also become members of the secretive Gluminati on my Discord server, and of course, subscribe to me here as I upload at least twice a week or once a week with a big video, as it turns out during this time of crisis, and I have a live stream every weekend. This channel is now represented on a subscriber platform called Viewer Prime that is a viable paid alternative to YouTube, where you pay a very low subscription fee each month and have access to all of my videos free of ads, as well as, the videos that I'm uploading on there at the moment, as well as exclusive content and a whole range of other channels you will never find on YouTube, such as lingerie wrestling and back alley fighting shows. I'm lucky enough to be their only experimental Dungeons & Dragons documentary channel, so I'd appreciate your support over there. YouTube needs competition. This week, I think it's high time we go soaring above the clouds of the world of Toril and the continent of Faerun, to leave the planet entirely and take a whirlwind tour of the other planets inside the fantastically enormous crystal sphere that contains the entire Realmspace star system. Those of you who play or played Spelljammer, there is a lot of updated and modern information in this video, where I'm talking more about the current state of affairs on the other locations in Realmspace. So sit back in your spelljamming helm, grab a tasty beverage, we're about to get deeply nerdy in space! I'll be using Realmspace by Dale Slade Henson, published in April 1991, and other Realmspace lore sources, including an updated document from 2016, which I am quoting from extensively in this video. I can't go into full detail on each planet and location because there's a limit on how long I can talk in one session, even me, but this will give you a firm idea of what's out there in one sitting. First, it's helpful to get a primer on what space travel is like in Dungeons & Dragons, because it is a high fantasy setting, just like everything else. There's a kind of what you would expect from a sword and sorcery adventure. When a flying ship leaves the atmosphere of a world, it kind of acts like a mini world of its own. Every object has its own gravity, so the ship carries a bubble of breathable air along with it. Most asteroids will have a fully breathable atmosphere, and even getting thrown off a ship and floating through the reasonably warm void of wild space inside the crystal sphere of Realmspace, a character will have a few minutes of breathable air still clinging to themselves, like they are a tiny asteroid with its own gravity and atmosphere. Air can be depleted, of course. Some asteroids have stale air, even toxic air. Some means to replenish it is needed, but it can be as simple as having lots of plants on board your ship, or easy access to learning spells that can create air, or open portals to the elemental plane of air, and so on. Flying in the wild space between worlds and objects takes relatively little time, mainly because extended periods of travel with nothing to do is really boring at the gaming table, so we just skip a lot of it and say that as long as no heavy objects get too close to the ship, it speeds up and zips from point A to point B really fast. Just like in Star Wars, gravity messes that up, and ships have to slow down to a crawl when they encounter heavy objects in the void. And this is where random encounters and such happen. So in game terms, you handle exactly like travel through the wilderness. Nothing much happens unless it happens. And travel in itself is just a matter of expended resources and stuff your characters can do in the downtime between the action-packed moments of the adventure. Practicing swordplay, studying spellbooks, learning some history, crafting items, or sitting around getting drunk and telling stories. First off, let's start from the centre of Realmspace and move outward in our journey. In Dungeons & Dragons, the contents of the crystal spheres is highly variable. Some of them don't have a star. Some have a system of planets and a star that orbit around an inhabited planet. Some are much, much weirder. But in Realmspace, we have a sun. The sun, when safely viewed, can be seen as a seething ball of fire. Its surface is continually spitting out solar flares, columns of fire millions of miles high, dotting the surface of the sun like dandelions in a field of grass, are hundreds of small openings to the elemental plane of fire. These planar doors are the entrance points from which fire elementals and fire-loving creatures come to live on this stellar object. Many of these creatures are well known, like the Ifriti, the fire newt, salamander, and so on. Other creatures like the lava worm and Helion make their homes here as well. It seems that the creatures that live on the sun have the ability to return to their native planes, but they all seem to prefer the sun to their own homes, for whatever reason. Nobody knows for sure, as nobody has successfully visited the surface of Realmspace Sun and survived. The climate of the sun is one of eternal heat, obviously. There is no known magical item or spell that can enable a living entity from the prime material plane to live here comfortably. It's very much like the forbidden heart of the elemental plane of fire. In that place, there is a point past which no non-native beings can survive. The same is true of the vast majority of the sun's surface. If you wish there to be an exception to this rule, then by all means, have an island of survivable inferno, formed by a sunspot, a crust of slightly cooler material formed by massive magnetic fields or some such, where a small zone has some sort of a structure and inhabitation by beings who protect themselves with all sorts of magical enchantments and artifacts. The Chronicles of Riddick have a prison set on an inferno world, which would be a great location to set in Realmspace Sun. Many of the native inhabitants of the sun prefer to bathe lakes of liquid earth, or some, like the dangerous mercurial Helians, enjoy grabbing sun flares and riding them for thousands of miles beyond the sun's surface for sport. Somehow hitching a ride with one of these could be a means to escape from the sun's surface. Around the sun, in an orbit far enough away to not be entirely scorched by the sun's heat, are 12 magic dead globes known as Sargassos. These huge areas effectively shut down all spelljamming, spellcasting, and magical items. The mage at the helm perceives these invisible magic dead areas with a sickening emptiness similar to the sensation of falling off a tall cliff. The spelljamming helm and all other magical sources of power fade to half strength in the first round, ceasing entirely on the second round, and then come back to half strength on the third round, sputtering, and then on the fourth round they're completely cut off, until the ship exits the Sargasso. Neither the helm nor any other magic item can restart in that zone. No spells can be cast. The sudden loss of spelljamming magic is quite a shock to the inexperienced piloting mage, and they may be liable to be stunned for a few days as they recover. Thankfully, the ship is usually moving at speed and will ride its momentum to drift beyond the edge of the Sargasso in a few days' time, unless it encounters another stranded ship, large structure, or a huge nasty creature which is lurking in ambush like some sort of a space kraken. These Sargassos are equidistant from each other in the circular orbits, so luckily they are very small compared to the complete scope of the crystal sphere. They're tiny and very difficult to locate. Those travelling to the closest planet named Anadia, and who overshoot towards the sun for some reason, are the most likely to be at risk of running into one of them, or if somebody was actually going to the sun for some reason. Anadia is the closest planet to the sun, being located 50 million miles away from it. The planet is incredibly hot. The vast majority of its surface is covered in rocky wastelands, broken up by cliffs, gargantuan canyons, and chasms. These wastelands are inhabited by umberhulks, ankhegs, and nomadic tribes of thrycreen. You'll find that thrycreen are quite common throughout the cosmos. The main sources of real civilization are at the poles. These poles are mountainous regions surrounded by large seas and inhabited by dark-skinned halflings. These halflings are believed to be the descendants of halflings from Toril, who were abducted by Neogi slavers long ago, before eventually breaking free from their control. The halflings of the North Pole make up the Anadian Empire. The Anadian Empire is ruled by a totalitarian government that exploited fears of domineering disease-carrying outsiders during the Atropos Wars to gain total power over the North Pole. As such, the Anadian Empire is incredibly insular, shoots down foreign spelljamming ships that enter its airspace, and also sends out spelljamming ships to seek out and eliminate potential threats to the Anadian Empire across Realmspace. The halflings of the South Pole are dominated by the South Anadian Trading Company. The South Anadian Trading Company rose in power several decades ago when they gained access to spelljamming technology. Able to travel across the stars, they were swiftly able to economically dominate the various nations and dynasties of the South Pole. Now that they've conquered South Anadia, they seek to extend their reach across the rest of Realmspace. Anadian halflings, as mentioned, have dark skin with unusually small eyes and ears. They also have no dark vision at all, and have the opposite problem to Drow, that in most other worlds, it's too dark for them to see well, so even in bright light, it's no better than dim light to their eyes, because Anadia is so incredibly bright. Of note are two unique forms of plant life on Anadia. The first is a thin plant with 3 stems covered with tiny turquoise leaves and small white flowers, which secrete a contact poison called powder puff, which will put someone into a coma for 10 days. However, When the secretion is dried and ground and prepared, it becomes an explosive, about half as effective as Torillian smoke powder, so it can be used in guns, cannons, and bombs. The other plant is called crispy leaf, a low-growing bush that has dense, thorny leaves which seem incredibly nourishing. Each leaf is capable of stopping a person being hungry for a solid hour. However, if more than 10 leaves are eaten within an hour's time, they cause gastric upset so horrible it can be fatal. The actual nutrients in these leaves are not capable of sustaining a person though, so overuse of them can lead to actual starvation. Their value as a weight loss method, however, is pretty high on most other worlds. Kaalia is the second planet from the Sun. Located 100 million miles from it, it's a gas giant made up primarily of air. Within the planet's atmosphere, orbiting around its centre of mass, there are hundreds and thousands of Earth motes. These Earth motes are floating islands which vary widely in size and elevation, many of them hosting their own ecosystems. It's believed that Kaalia was once the battleground for powerful avian creatures and a race of powerful reptilian creatures. All that remains of these creatures, though, is the foot soldiers of their war, the Herkatha and the lizard folk, who carry on their progenitors' conflict. This, of course, can be the creator races, the Eri and the Saruk. Both races believe they've created a society that allows perfect freedom. The Herkatha live in a democracy with very few laws, which has allowed a small clique of powerful matriarchal merchant houses to rise to the top of society, holding a great deal of power. The lizard folk live in a democracy with many laws, which theoretically prevents one person or group from attaining too much wealth or power, but also stifles and constrains its inhabitants in an ironclad bureaucracy. The Herkatha and lizard folk inhabit the upper earth motes of Kaalia, with towers reaching out of the planet's cloudy exterior, marking places where it's safe for Spelljammer ships to land. Both sides are engaged in a war of economics and alliances. Both hope to crush the other by spreading their idea of freedom across Realmspace. Also inhabiting Kaalia are the dragons. By playing the Herkatha and lizard folk off against each other, they manage to take control of the lower earth motes, where it's said to be rich in gemstones. These dragons are neither particularly benevolent nor overly malevolent, only concerned with the ongoing prosperity and comfort of themselves and their families. They're mostly neutral in alignment. Then we have Toril. It's a third planet from the Sun, being located 100 million miles from it. It has a diverse geography and incredibly complex history, as we know. 2/3 of the planet's surface is covered in water. Its landmasses include the desert continent of Zakara, the jungle continent of Mazdaka, the bountiful continent of Karatur, and the chaotic continent of Faerun. Toril is home to many powerful individuals and factions. It's also one of the reasons why Realmspace is given such a wide berth by many major spacefaring organisations. The Spelljammers brave enough to visit the planet often keep their extraterrestrial origins a secret from the locals, so as not to ruffle any feathers, often landing their ship out at sea and then sailing into the harbour of most coastal cities, as though they were just another merchant ship. Not all spacefarers are cowed by Toril's fearsome reputation, however. In Anchorome, there is a nest of Neogi slavers who are steadily working on spreading their influence across the continent. In Katashaka, there is an ancient archmage who regularly imports monsters from far beyond the stars, has them fight in grand battles for control of the continent. Lastly, in Ossi, the meddling of Spelljammers has resulted in a spreading infestation of veggie pygmies, which threatens to consume the entire continent. Of course, the people of Faerun have no idea this is going on. Selûne is Toril's moon, many regard it as an uninhabited wasteland, made up of rocky, barren expanses. Despite that, there is one small city of note on the surface, the Liera Trading Centre. The Liera Trading Centre is primarily populated by moon elves, humans, and half-elves. They're a strange and insular people. While they gladly welcome visitors and traders, they are incredibly secretive about much of their city. Vast sections of the city, especially the subterranean sections, are off limits to outsiders, with trespassers being swiftly executed. The inhabitants of the LTC are known liars. They lie about almost every aspect of their civilization. For example, they claim that their kingdom spans all of Selûne, concealed beneath a cunning illusion that hides it from outsiders. They also claim that the inhabitants of Toril are plotting war with them, and that they've been amassing a whole manner of powerful weapons for the day that Toril's invasion inevitably comes. It's unclear how much the average Selûnian believes these lies. Some speculate that these lies are used by the ruler, Queen Flandra, to keep the populace in check. Others wonder if them telling constant lies about their home is simply the way of honouring their goddess Liera, whom they claim to worship. Despite the eccentricities of the Selûnians, the LTC is a popular place to visit. It's a vast city made up of interconnected buildings made of white corridors, archways and pillars. The Selûnians adore art, aesthetics and hedonistic indulgence. The right artwork sold to the right person can make a lot of coin there, as well as many different types of pleasures and wonders for a visitor to experience. The Tears of Selûne are a collection of asteroids that trail after Selûne. Many are so small and barren that they are incapable of supporting life. Those that can are inhabited, often feuded over by the various factions of Realmspace, prime territory. The number of asteroids act as strongholds for Neogi, mind flayers, beholders and other such creatures that seek to spread their influence across Realmspace. The most famous asteroid in the Tears of Selûne is Dragon's Rock. Atop the asteroid is a city known as Wormport, which serves as a hub for activity in Realmspace. Travellers and merchants from across Realmspace and beyond going there to trade. Wormport is ruled over by a powerful group of Netherese mages who spend most of their time at a large tower at the centre of the city. They rarely take active involvement in the running of the city, only leave their tower occasionally to dispose of those who are disrupting the peace of Wormport in a big way. The day-to-day running of the city is done by a number of self-appointed individuals and organisations who seek to ensure that all business in Wormport runs smoothly and efficiently and doesn't get the attention of the Netherese wizards. Abir is a planet that shares the same dimensional coordinates with Toril, strangely enough. It's ruled over by powerful dragons and elementals. For much of its history, few in Realmspace have known of its existence. However, during the Spell Plague, Toril was engulfed in blue flames and parts of it exchanged places with Abir. This caused many rumours to abound of ways to get to Abir from Realmspace. Some claimed it was possible to do so by casting the right conjuration spell as one entered Toril's atmosphere. Others claimed that it was something to do with entering Toril's atmosphere at the right velocity. These types of rumours continued until the time of the Second Sundering, when they were all replaced by a single rumour. This rumour states that the Second Sundering well and truly sundered Abir from Toril once and for all, and the two of them now are linked in a synchronous orbit in opposite sides of the Sun. Many have gone out in search of Abir, hoping to plunder what wealth it has to offer. While some return with fantastic tales of strange sights they saw in Abir, many more have returned claiming they couldn't find it at all. Worryingly, there is also a sizable proportion of them that went out looking for Abir and simply never returned. Capri is the fourth planet from the Sun. It's located 300 million miles from it. This planet's surface is entirely made of water, with no landmasses or islands. The closest Capri comes to solid ground are the icy poles, as well as thick masses of seaweed that encompass the planet's equator. Long ago, aquatic elves of Toril grew fearful of the encroachment of other races into their territory, believing that their way of life would be wiped away. Feeling certain that the only way that could be safe was to be far away from other humanoids, they left Toril and set up life in the vast oceans of Capri. The aquatic elves of Capri today are incredibly insular, share the paranoia of their ancestors, attacking any ship that lands on their ocean, seeing them as invaders automatically. The polar regions and seaweed jungle are also dangerous to land on, the icy regions being inhabited by a whole manner of arctic monsters, and the seaweed jungle being home to giant insects and arachnids. The only noteworthy port of call on the entire planet is an exclusive hunting lodge located on the South Pole, run by a gnome named Rhododendra Redcap. Wealthy clients who visit the hunting lodge are given the opportunity to hunt a whole manner of ice beasts, such as yetis, winter wolves, polar bears and remoras. Those who pay exorbitant fees can also have their quarry stuffed, mounted, skinned or even fashioned into armour and accessories. So fashionable. The Capri graveyard in orbit around Capri is a spelljamming ship graveyard. This graveyard was originally an elven research station made up of several ships bound together. However, the inhabitants of the research station were killed by mind flayers, and their tortured souls began clinging to the mortal coil as ghosts, which haunt the research station's ruins. Since then, a number of spelljamming adventurers have tried to loot the ruins. However, the ghosts guard the ruins against potential intruders, killing any who defile their resting place. As such, a ship graveyard began to form around the research station, the remains of adventuring parties that tried to delve into the research station and never came back. While some think that this would discourage adventurers from going into this near shipyard, many still tried to test their luck against it, believing there must be something of worth on the dozens of adventurous ships that litter this place would make no sense. However, the graveyard is no longer haunted by just the ghosts of elves now. Wraiths, spectres, banshees and other restless spirits swarm around from the victims that also haunt the graveyard. The fact that so many spirits inhabit such a small region has caused some to speculate that there might be some sort of a device or artifact responsible for anchoring these souls to the material plane. Others have wondered if all those spirits in one place are capable of warping reality in some way, citing stories of ships that were mysteriously pulled towards the ship graveyard against the crew's will. Chandos is the 5th planet from the Sun, being located 400 million miles from it. The entire planet is a hot, humid swamp. Dagobah. Its surface is covered mostly in water with thousands of islands spread across it, vast archipelagos. These islands are unstable, a mix of tectonic and volcanic forces causing them to sink beneath the water and rise back up out of it, seemingly at random. The planet's instability is believed to be the result of a terraforming project gone wrong. According to one story, long ago, an ancient race of powerful amphibian creatures, the Batrachi, fled Toril and tried to transform Chandos into a new home. In some tellings, they failed spectacularly and wiped themselves out. In others, they knew the transformation would take millennia and so locked themselves away in hibernation until the terraforming project was complete. Due to its instability, Chandos is unable to hold any major form of civilization. However, rumours of large gemstone deposits have attracted many spelljammers, some of whom have wound up getting stranded by islands suddenly rising or sinking. Those who get stranded often have to resort to eking out a nomadic existence, their spacefaring days long behind them. The major inhabitants of Chandos are the clans of dwarves, humans, and orcs. The dwarves are the most aggressive, adorning themselves in the bones of their enemies, and attack all non-dwarves they come across. The humans are the most cunning, relying on ambushes, stealth, sabotage, and psychological warfare to overcome their perceived foes. The orcs are the most peaceful, relying on shamanic magic to overcome aggressors, most of their clans being led by powerful druids. Glyph is the 6th planet from the Sun, being located 1,000 million miles from it. It is a ringed planet with a rocky, barren surface that is completely uninhabitable. Beneath the surface, though, there is a vast underground complex run by mind flayers. This complex is powered by some kind of a strange organic technology and is overseen by a vast elder brain that seems to permeate the entire complex. The mind flayers are completely self-sustaining. They have large numbers of humanoid cattle which they breed and keep in permanent simulation baths. These simulation baths psionically simulate experiences and sensations for the humanoids, causing them to believe that they're living whole lives on Toril. This allows the mind flayers to gain pleasure of devouring intellectually stimulated minds with none of the risks that come from having educated cattle. Despite their insular nature and the fact that their complex is completely self-sustaining, the mind flayers of Glyph still have a navy that patrols Realmspace. This is because the mind flayers of Glyph are paranoid, live in constant fear that their enemies are plotting against them. As such, their navy exists to protect the Glyph from direct threats and to subtly undermine any potential threats to their planet, so they can be found plotting and scheming and sabotaging for seemingly no reason all over Realmspace. Haven is one of the 2 moons of Glyph. It's a egg-shaped moon with barren surface that has no atmosphere. At the base of it, however, there is this large hole that leads to a hollowed, atmosphered interior. The gravity of plane of Haven is such that you can walk around the surface of both its exterior and its interior. Haven is home to many Elhoons, a type of undead mind flayer. They prefer isolation and set their Quaggoth slaves on any perceived intruders. Despite that, there are rumours of spelljamming adventurers who have made some kind of a peaceful contact with the Elhoons. The Elhoons can recognise fellow arcane spellcasters and grant them a small degree of respect. They are willing to trade knowledge, especially arcane secrets and information relating to potential threats against them. The Elhoons have an alliance of sort with the mind flayers of Glyph. Ships belonging to the Glyph Navy are regularly found docked at Haven, and both sides are willing to exchange important information with each other. As such, Haven serves as a mostly neutral ground where brave or desperate spelljammers can meet and discuss matters with representatives of Glyph. The 2nd moon of Glyph is Mingabwe. It's used to be a cold and icy moon, but things changed when its own moon, Polluta, so it's a moon with a moon, suddenly began spilling out volcanic fumes. The story goes that shortly before the Atropos Wars, a cleric of Tyr found a powerful evil artifact known as the Ruby of Baelor on Polluta. Knowing that such a foul artifact couldn't be allowed to exist, she invoked the power of Tyr to try and destroy it. She succeeded. However, the evil of the artifact escaped and made its way to the moonlet's core. into Polluter's core. There it merged with the moon, or perhaps awoke something. Polluter suddenly began heating up, volcanoes forming and erupting across it, lava and obsidian covering its surface. The volcanic activity also began spilling out thick smoke, which trailed behind the drifting moon, spiraling down and making its way to Mingabwe. The smoke filled Mingabwe's upper atmosphere, causing the planet to heat up. Clouds of smog and acid rain become commonplace, destroying or hampering much of the plant life across Mingabwe. Trading posts and stopping points littered Mingabwe were quickly abandoned. The only remaining settlement of note is located at the North Pole, where the smog and acid rain are less commonplace. The settlement is called Mercy. It's merely a collection of trading posts and taverns which cater to pirates, lowlifes and assorted criminals. It still isn't a very nice environment. Curiously, there are some on Mingabwe who show an interest in exploring Polluter. They claim that the Ruby of Balor was one of 2 evil magic items hidden on the moon long ago by the paladin Justin Demonslayer. They claim that the other one is still sitting somewhere on the volcanic moon, just waiting to be found. Garden is the 7th planet from the Sun, being located 1,200 million miles from it. In truth, Garden's not a planet at all, but is instead a collection of asteroids bound together by a vast plant-like organism known as Yggdrasil's Child. No one knows for sure how Yggdrasil's Child came to be. Some claim that it was a sapling carved from the World Tree, while others claim it is an invasive species from another crystal sphere or perhaps another dimension. There are also those who claim that ancient druids from Toril once tried to make a tree of endless bounty. Instead, they created a tree that just wouldn't stop growing, and so banished it to the deepest regions of Realmspace, where it became Yggdrasil's Child. Whatever the truth of the matter, Garden is an interesting place to say the least. Many visit Garden in the hopes of studying Yggdrasil's Child or harvesting from its herbs and fruits, which have a number of uses. However, Garden is also a dangerous place and home to a number of hostile blights, which are said to be spawned by Yggdrasil's Child, either as an instinctual defense against visitors who might harm it or as a means of spreading its seeds to other worlds. Garden has a number of moons. The precise number of moons has changed over the centuries, as new ones have formed and old ones have been destroyed. The names applied to them also seem to change every century or so, no one agreeing exactly on what to call them. At present, the 12 moons are Azuth's Breath, Farworld, Jord, Glorianus, Grandchild, Jade Town, Nerl, Loki, Retine, Celsia's Keep, Templar, and Yurthad. Azuth's Breath is a small blue sun that orbits Garden. It's most visible from Garden at night, its eerie blue light providing illumination for Garden's nocturnal creatures. Old rumours claim that the sun was once an elven outpost that dabbled in forbidden arcane magic, is now permanently consumed by deadly spellfire. Farworld is a strangely shaped world, once home to a trading post and mining colony. The inhabitants once dug too deep and awoke an ancient horror. The planet collapsed in on itself and the land falling into a sea of black tar. The only land that remains now are colossal chunks of brightly coloured coral that grow out of this black, formless sea. The only known inhabitants of this world are evil flumps. Many of these flumps possess some degree of psychic spellcasting, able to innately cast spells such as Magic Missile, Telekinesis, Disintegrate, and Dominate Monster. They seem determined to conquer Realmspace with attack ships that will land on Farworld and try to commandeer them so that they can spread their touch to other worlds. Fjord is a spherical moon riddled with a maze of tunnels. The exterior of the moon is airless, but the interior has an atmosphere that is maintained by the strange bioluminescent mould that grows on the walls. It's used to be home to many dwarven mining colonies, though they abandoned it after mining pretty much everything of value from the moon. In more recent years, minotaurs have moved into the planet's labyrinthine tunnels. What they're doing there is unknown, but they are likely related in some way to the Garistro that is said to be lurking at the moon's core. Glorianus is a small crescent-shaped moon completely covered in soft grass. The only inhabitant is Griffin Broadleaf, a centuries-old human archdruid who originally gave the moon its name. He's an archetypical mad hermit, is prone to spouting mangled aphorisms and any who try to talk to him. Grandchild is an oval-shaped moon. Its completely smooth surface is unmarred by craters. Its off-white surface is highly reflective, and its names come from the old belief that the moon was a seed spawned by Yggdrasil's Child. Most folk these days accept that it's an artificial construction, most likely the retreat of an ancient archmage. Despite repeated efforts, none have managed to gain access to the presumed sanctum inside. Jade Town is one of Garden's few inhabited moons. It's made up of white jade. It's carved into a shape of a large dragon. Magical wards prevent the jade from being mined. The moon is said to have been created by an evil mage long ago as a base from which to study Garden. The moon gets its name from a small spaceport set up in the dragon's open moor. The port acts as a minor trading post and a place of respite for those planning to head down to the planet. Toril is a spherical moon made up of swirling, semi-liquid, multicoloured marble. Different parts of the marble harden and soften at different times, seemingly at random. Unfortunate visitors have had the marble soften under their feet, causing them to sink into it and then harden again later. Objects absorbed into the marble are said to be slowly transformed into more of this semi-liquid marble stuff. Any marble removed from the moon slowly hardens, and good money can be made by creating and selling sculptures made from the semi-liquid marble. Loki is the smallest of the moons. It's barren and has no atmosphere. A century ago, a bored mage transmuted it into a 20-sided polyhedron and placed magical wards on it, causing any ship that approached it to be struck by a random magical effect. The moon has a wild orbit that causes it to loop around several other moons as it orbits Garden, so the damn thing can pop up just about anywhere. RedNZblue is a spherical moon that gets its name from the large crater in the middle of it that gives it the appearance of an eye. The interior of the crater is home to many exotic plants and mushrooms that only grow in the crater and are useful as spell components and crafting potions. A small tribe of Grimlocks farm these plants and mushrooms and trade them with outsiders. Celsia's Keep is a flat disc-shaped moon that is featureless save for a large castle that stands at its centre. The castle is home to the storm giant named Celsia. He himself found the uninhabited moon long ago and claimed it for himself, and renaming it in honour of himself. A ring of sustenance ensures that he needs no food and drink. For entertainment, he uses a scrying pool to spy on exciting developments across Realmspace. His constant scrying makes him a useful source of information about matters across Realmspace. However, he only accepts visitors who can provide him with some form of entertainment to relieve his boredom. Templar is another flat disc-shaped moon. It's also home to many archmages and artificers who are tended to by animated suits of armour known as Templars. However, the Templars eventually grew self-aware and broke free from the mage's control, killing them or forcing them to flee. The Templars have since began to dabble in wizardry and artificing for themselves. They are steadily building facilities that will allow them to produce more of their own kind. Disturbing development. Herkatha is the largest moon and also one of the most dangerous. Surrounding it are yellow clouds of highly corrosive acid. They constantly barrage the surface of the planet with a storm of acid rain. The surface of the planet is said to be completely coated in an ocean of acid. A number of exotic creatures are said to live in this ocean, however. Only the most acid-resistant ship could ever hope of even approaching this planet's surface. Herkatha is the furthest planet from the Sun, being located 1,600 million miles from it. It's a flat, wheel-shaped planet. Its inhabited side faces directly towards the Sun. Much of the planet is covered in water, with the occasional mountain jutting out of it. In the middle of this planet is a spindle, a huge mountain that is 200 miles wide at its base and over 1,000 miles tall. The planet is inhabited almost exclusively by beholders and their slaves. The beholders are separated into different clans, each led by a different hive mother. These clans battle each other constantly, and the beholders being sent to fight and die at the behest of the hive mothers on their spiteful reasons, who each wish to become the dominant force in Herkatha. One of the ways in which the hive mothers try to gain dominance on Herkatha is by gaining access to the mind stations located across the spindle. These magical devices were created by ancient beholders who inhabited Herkatha eons ago. These beholders are said to have grown so knowledgeable that even their own vast brains couldn't store all their information, so they dumped their excess knowledge into the mind stations. While the information within the mind stations is largely useless and outdated, the beholders of Herkatha still fight for control over the mind stations in the hopes of finding one kernel of knowledge that proves useful to them. The only thing the beholders hate more than rival clans are outsiders. Most beholders will try to kill or enslave visiting spelljammers on sight. However, a small number of hive mothers have seen the potential benefits of interacting with outsiders and have set up docks where they are willing to trade goods and services with them. Turnbethel is a gaseous moon that orbits Herkatha. The gases that make up the moon are incredibly volatile and react explosively on contact with oxygen. As such, only ships with no need for oxygen, such as those crewed by undead, can safely enter it. Because of this, the moon is a haven for undead pirates. One of the most infamous undead pirate ships to visit Turnbethel is the Black Dracolith. It's said that this ship is captained by a dragonborn Death Knight. Supposedly in life she was a greedy pirate who vowed to not rest until she'd earned 1,000,000 gold pieces. As such, she continues to travel across Realmspace, raiding ships and adding treasure to her hoard until her mission is completed. At the centre of Turnbethel is the Skull of the Void, a gargantuan skull-shaped space station. It was once ruled by mind flayers who performed experiments on enslaved beholders. However, one of the beholders underwent metamorphosis into a death tyrant and broke free of its captivity, killed its captors, and took control of the entire skull. It then moved the skull to the centre of Turnbethel, where it's been slowly amassing an army of undead for some unknown, unspeakable purpose. Orbiting the Sun in the farthest reaches of Realmspace, establishing the midway point between the star system and the actual barrier of the enclosing crystal sphere, which gives a pretty good indication of just how mind-bogglingly enormous the crystal sphere actually is a small asteroid that is barren and unremarkable save for a large tower built on top of it. The tower is said to have once orbited Herkatha and been home to a powerful archmage named Sarelk. When Sarelk left Realmspace several decades ago, the Legion of 8 took over the tower and moved its orbit far from Herkatha. The Legion of 8 is made up of 8 incredibly powerful mages. The mages are each from a different planet and have dreams of conquest of their own. They seek to take over their respective planets and believe that by pooling their resources and knowledge together, they'll be able to achieve what alone none of them could do. However, while they wield powerful magic and possess a vast web of allies and agents across Realmspace, their plans of conquest have a long way to go before they've come to fruition. Their members include a dragon sorcerer from Kaalia, an Aelitha Lich from Glyph, and a beholder mage from Herkatha. In theory, they are all working together to further each of their goals. However, in truth, they often work at cross purposes. Each member of the Legion of 8 is willing to do whatever is necessary to conquer their planet, even if it means covertly undermining or double-crossing their allies. So who is out there in Realmspace? What factions and situations can a bunch of adventurers get embroiled in? First, let's have a list of optional organisations that you can insert into your adventures in Realmspace, or even get involved in a campaign on the world of Toril, opening the player's eyes to a much wider campaign environment than they previously expected. The Stargazers, known as the Academy of Stargazers, are an organisation devoted to the acquisition of knowledge. Supposedly, they started many centuries ago as a group of Zakaran astrologers who believed that all knowledge was locked away in the stars. However, to decode the secrets of the stars, they needed a vast amount of information in order to reverse engineer the stars' cipher. As such, they sent out agents to gather seemingly random pieces of information. For example, they sent agents to study a specific rock formation, or to learn about a war that had taken place centuries ago, or to study the properties of a specific metal. The information they gained was plugged into their vast astrological equation, allowing them to gain a glimpse of the information held within the stars. However, the Stargazers still have a long way to go before they unlock all of the secrets that astrology has to offer. Over the centuries, the Stargazers have expanded their base of operations, even taking to the stars themselves. Across Realmspace, they found previously untapped sources of information, began studying every facet of the celestial bodies that they could find. The information they found has made them powerful, as many sought the information they gathered, and the Stargazers gladly sold their information to whoever had enough coin to buy it, reinvesting into their enterprise. While the high-ranking Stargazers spend their time working on astrological theories and equations, deeply involved in mathematics, lower-ranking members are expected to devote themselves to the travelling Realmspace and gathering knowledge. So, it's an excellent organisation that can serve as a patron or a rival of the player characters. You can easily spin the Stargazers to be a corrupt group run by secretive and evil despots who are only out for themselves and the exploitation of Realmspace and the largely ignorant population of the planet Toril. Other groups stand against such exploitation, two of which are the Moonstars and the Starbound Crusaders. The Moonstars are a secretive organisation that seeks to protect Realmspace from outside threats. Due to the fact that they are a semi-secret organisation, no one knows how long they've existed for, though they claim to have existed for centuries, predating the organisations on Toril that share the same name. Their goal is to keep Realmspace safe. They know that there are many factions beyond Realmspace that span the known cosmos. These factions are constantly looking to expand their power and influence, and would think nothing of bringing yet another crystal sphere under their thumb. As such, the Moonstars do all they can to undermine outside factions from gaining a foothold in Realmspace. In the past, this worked a little too well. The relative peace of Realmspace meant that the Rock of Brawl, largely considered the crossroads of the cosmos, temporarily made Realmspace its home, bringing merchants and travellers from the furthest corners of the cosmos to visit it. This changed during the Atropos Wars. The Rock of Brawl fled Realmspace, seeking a home elsewhere. Many other factions and organisations likewise fled, seeing Realmspace as a dangerous and savage place about to be plunged into absolute disaster. While a number of merchants still regularly visit Realmspace, the larger spacefaring community left Realmspace behind and didn't look back. Since then, the Moonstars have worked to solidify Realmspace's reputation as a place that isn't worth visiting. While they allow merchants and travellers to visit, they deliberately spread rumours of danger relating to Realmspace, such as the stories of the dangerously volatile runes inscribed on the surface of Realmspace's crystal sphere, which are quite real and absolutely mysterious and astoundingly huge and formidable. One can easily get ahead within the Moonstars by simply helping them fight against outsiders trying to amass power within Realmspace, especially Mind Flayers and Neogi. The Starbound Crusaders are a group of spacefaring adventurers. They believe in opposing cruelty and corruption in as stylish a way as possible. An ordinary heroic adventurer might think their job is done after freeing prisoners from Neogi slavers. However, a starbound crusader knows their job isn't done until they've also killed the Neogi, blown up their ship, and surfed away from the explosion on a piece of the ship's debris. Their focus on stylishness stems from the theory that the cosmos is shaped by belief. This doesn't just refer to the fact that people's beliefs affect how they act, but also the idea that reality is somehow mutable, twists in subtle ways to match what people believe. By performing such outlandish heroic deeds in as impressive a way as possible, they ensure that their deeds will be remembered. People will speak about their exploits, and some who hear them will be inspired to become real heroes as well. Not just that, but as the stories spread further, people will begin to believe that the heroes can overcome villains no matter the odds. Allowing the Starbound Crusaders to call upon that collective belief, they perform death-defying stunts. It's unclear how much belief actually affects reality, whether there really is a pool of belief that these heroes can tap into when facing impossible odds. Regardless of whether or not it's true, the Starbound Crusaders have certainly managed to inspire many new heroes since their founding. Many of its members are folk who witnessed a Starbound Crusader in action and were inspired to become adventurers as a result. While lower-ranking members of the Starbound Crusaders are often seen as mere braggarts, the higher-ranking members are revered folk heroes across Realmspace. A great example of some real scum-sucking bad dudes in Realmspace are the cult of Atropos. If you want to know who or what Atropos is, I have a video about that on my channel. A little over a century ago, the monster known as Atropos ravaged Realmspace. There are many tales of its origins, though little in the way of a consensus. Some claim he is the remains of an ancient primordial who once tried to siphon all divine magic in Realmspace, while others argue that he was the stillborn twin of Ao, the overgod. It's clearly very out there, and most likely very far from the truth. However, despite the truth of its origins, all that's known about him is that he took the form of a small moon of black rock with a horrifying visage carved into its surface, or more likely, the entire moon is actually the decapitated head of some terrifying primordial power from a previous incarnation of the multiverse. After appearing, Atropos travelled Realmspace, drifting, devouring souls from any world it passed, as he steadily made his way towards Toril. During this time, whether out of madness, desperation, or self-interest, many started to join cults devoted to Atropos. These cults began sacrificing souls to Atropos, making him stronger, and also began undermining efforts made to combat Atropos. The conflict between these cults and those that opposed them eventually became known as the Atropos Wars. I mean, it was a time of madness. These cults rose up out of desperation and a grab for whatever power they could. As these conflicts reached their climax, Atropos grew closer and closer to Toril. In the end, one final line of defense was set up between Atropos and Toril, as thousands of ships fought as one against Atropos, keeping him busy while the most powerful archmages from across Realmspace united their power in a ritual that released a destructive wave of spellfire at Atropos. This wave of spellfire tore through him, destroying his physical form. However, while the Atropos Wars appeared to be over, the conflict had taken its toll on Realmspace. Uncountably many had been killed, and Realmspace had gone from being a cosmopolitan centre of spacefaring activity to a desolate backwater crystal sphere. It's also believed by some that the intense strain on the weave caused by the spellfire wave was at least partially responsible for the spell plague backlash that affected Toril shortly thereafter. Furthermore, while many believe Atropos is dead and gone, the cult's devotion to him remains. Over the past century, these cults have emerged together into one vast organisation that spans across Realmspace, more like a demented mafia. Some of these cults are concerned only with sacrificing souls to Atropos, while others are concerned with worming their way into a position of authority so they can be better able to serve Atropos when he inevitably returns. As generations pass and memories of Atropos fade, there's also an increasing number of folk who join the cult as an outlet for their own twisted desires, or as a means of forming the connections necessary to gain wealth and influence. They may pay lip service to the idea of Atropos, but in their hearts they only serve themselves. One gains renown in the cult of Atropos by loyally and capably following the orders of one's superiors, be it helping them perform a bloody sacrifice or by helping them gain wealth and power and burying a lot of bodies along the way. Weaving this larger campaign into the Tomb of Annihilation adventure certainly is a possibility. When you think about how the two could be closely related and how Acererak could have dealings with many other worlds within Realmspace, there's no limits to how grand an adventure can become in Dungeons & Dragons. Finally, my tips on how to run a spelljamming adventure for what they're worth. The perfect example is something like a classic Star Trek episode. The adventurers are main characters of the show, beaming down to the planet, and what do you know? They always land exactly in the right place to be at the centre of some situation where the shit is about to hit the fan, or has already hit the fan. That's the key, really. The adventurers don't have to go looking for the excitement. As soon as they arrive at their destination or are stopped midway through their journey, the adventure is immediate and urgent. They are in a situation that is unfolding right here and now. They have to act, or things are going to spiral out of their personal control. I think it's important to note that at all times, the fate of the player characters is, or should be, in the hands of the player. I often say, as the Dungeon Master, hey, I don't kill player characters. The players get their own characters killed by the choices that they make and the terrible dice results that they roll. I had 2 total party kills as a result of the improper application of a fireball spell last year in 2019. The players are certainly wiser for having had those incidents, I'm sure. When adventurers are travelling through space and landing on planets, there's often a very strong drive in them to get back home to Toril, and you can certainly play on that a lot by temporarily taking out their ship's ability to travel freely, by having it hijacked or damaged, so that the player characters have to find some means in the location they're temporarily stranded in to either fix their ship, get it back, or find some other means to travel. This is like stealing the player's toy and safety blanket at the same time, so don't overuse it. When the characters arrive on the planet, you're really aiming to present them with the best that planet has to offer in the form of an exotic adventure location. Don't hold back anything with this idea that the players want to trudge through alien jungles and such just to discover things. They don't. They really don't want to just, land there and have to look for stuff. They want the adventure to happen to them. So, get on with it. So think, what are the 7 wonders of that location? Cram them all into an area within spitting distance of each other and crank the dial up to 11. Don't just give them the Great Wall of China and the Pyramids of Giza. Give them a war between 2 empires who are both building these monumental structures at the same time, and vicious battles are being waged over key resources like marble quarries or the muddy shores of a volcanic lake that is just the right sort of clay. At the same time, the characters are involved in some sort of a transport heist with the local resistance fighters whose land is being destroyed by these crazy empires. And they're motivated to attack the transport with them because when they crash landed on the planet, their ship landed on the transport. And when they exited the ship to see what the damage, they were violently thrown off the transport by these weird necro-golem guards built by an ancient academy of dragon warlocks who serve an undead planet. See what I mean? Lay it out and give the players that precious feeling of wonder. This is why they flew into space, not to trudge around a weird city without any idea of what's going on or who to talk to. Not to be bored and just end up picking fights in some space tavern eating space food. Not to land their ship, gaze around a vast landscape and have no idea what direction to go or why any other direction than heading home would be more appealing. Spelljamming is supposed to be crazy, hectic, seat of your pants adventure. It's also supposed to be oddball, bizarre, largely made up on the spot, and quite often absolutely hilarious. This is why we have giant space hamsters and sentient asteroids and living magnifying glass monsters that can set your ship on fire. Spelljamming is fun. It's also quite often incredibly dangerous, but hey, we're not playing Dungeons & Dragons to be safe or boring, and as I've said before, the disasters and mishaps in D&D are just as much fun as the triumphs and heroic feats of legend. If your players finally dust off and soar into the sky, leaving behind another alien world, and they're all wide-eyed and somewhat manic with expressions such as, "Holy shit, that planet's crazy," congratulations, you got it exactly right. Please hit the like button if you made it this far. If you like what I do and have not yet subscribed, honestly, I don't know what else I can do for you at this point, just hit the button already. Check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts for these videos. Buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.